Tonight on Free Minds TV, do you believe that you have the right to arm yourself with a knife or maybe even a gun? Well, we're going to be getting into one story that comes from the UK where police are actually stopping citizens on the streets to make sure that they have absolutely no way of protecting themselves. We're also going to be getting into the Ron Paul rally and a whole lot more when we come back right here on Free Minds TV. And welcome to a brand new edition of Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. With you this evening is Toby.
And Nick.
All right, we're going to be getting into a lot of different stories. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the I can't say his name today. The Ron Paul rally that's been happening in Minneapolis, kind of the side from the Republican convention. We'll be getting into that, as well as a story about another political program, Democracy Now!, and some of the protests that's been going on. But first, we're going to travel across the pond over to the UK and talk about knives, because, you know, knives, they're dangerous, Nick.
Well,
we got to get rid of them.
The UK banned guns, and now they've gone down the slippery slope of banning knives.
Yeah, I mean, they banned guns so that, you know, you got to protect the people. No one can have a gun. The only people that can have guns are the government, the authority figures, all those great people. And now, well, people are still trying to defend themselves when they're robbed and when they're out in the street. So we've got to take away their other defense mechanisms, which would be, in this case, knives. And they don't have that little pesky constitution that says, well, you need to have a warrant to be searched. They can pretty much search anyone for any reason, or even no reason at all. In this case, since they're trying to get rid of knives, they're using metal detectors. So they're going up to random people on the street. This coming from Manchester over in the UK. They're going up to random people on the streets and using handheld metal detectors to check if they have any kind of weapons on them, be that guns, knives, or other illegal contraband. They're also taking down names, checking, running their names to see if they have any outstanding warrants or that such. So what are their findings? What do you think they're finding, Nick? They finding a lot of knives out there cleaning up the streets, keeping people safe?
My guess is they're probably not finding all that many knives. I would guess they're finding a lot of other things, because just because you get a positive on the metal detector doesn't mean you're carrying a knife. A lot of people carry coins in their pocket.
But positive on the metal detector is reason enough to search, and they are finding some things. Not so many knives. Here's an example on one sidewalk where they were doing the wanding for about an hour. They found 40 people during the operation. They searched 40 people. They didn't find anyone carrying any knives, but they did manage to arrest 9 people for drug charges and other offenses, such as jumping bail and stuff. So it looks like about 25% of the people, a little less, about 24-25% of the people in that case were arrested. None of them for what the police were supposedly even out there for. So what this actually is looking like, yes, it would be bad to search people for knives or other weapons, make sure that they can't defend themselves. It completely flies in the face with any kind of common sense. But this is just a huge Big Brother police tactic to get people for pretty much whatever they want. Let's go out on the street. Yeah, you're going to find people breaking the law. A lot of people break the law out there. If you have the ability to just stop anyone on the street and make sure they haven't broken any laws that day, well, you're going to be able to arrest. Well, in this case, they were able to arrest 25% of the people at this stop. Similar findings in other stops. They're finding a lot of people to arrest, but very few weapons are actually being found. But the city is still plagued with lots of knife violence. They found over 2,000 knife crimes last year alone in Manchester. So we've got to do something about this, Nick. We've got to clear out all the knives. You can't even chop up meat in your kitchen nowadays, it seems. How do you get the knife that's illegal home from the grocery store to the kitchen if you're not allowed to carry it in between?
I think in the United Kingdom what they've said is you have to have a good reason. So you have to be able to explain why you have the knife. So if you're fishing, if you're using it for some kind of trade, like you're a construction worker and you have some kind of a blade for that, it sounds like they let that go if they think you have a good excuse.
But what if you're just trying to defend yourself against, look, if I lived in a city where they told me there were over 2,000 knife crimes last year, I'd want to defend myself. I'd want to have something on my person so that if someone attacks me with a knife or another weapon, I can defend myself. Are those people just out of luck?
Pretty much. I mean, in the United Kingdom, the government's position is not really in favor of self-defense.
No.
And it's not really in the United States either. They try to urge you to call the police. But much more so in the United Kingdom, you can face charges many times even if you have legitimate reason to defend yourself. So you're really not even supposed to fight back, which is probably one of the reasons that crime is so high, because most people are disarmed. They can't carry firearms. They can't even carry...
I was a robber, this
Right.
is where I'd be going. I'd be going to the place where no one can fight back, and a whole nation full of wimps that we're bringing up over there, it seems. People who are told to just whip her down on the ground and cry and take all my belongings. Please, please, you have a knife and I'm a good little citizen, so I'm not allowed to carry one or defend myself with any other means. I mean, give me a break. This is if I was a robber trying to go and abuse other people's rights, trample on their rights, and take stuff from them, I'm going to the place where no one's allowed to defend themselves.
Beyond the defense issue, I think it points out why the Constitution in the United States is an important document, even though it's not really respected very much at all by politicians. But it's still there, and they can't really violate it too blatantly.
Not to this extent, at least. I mean,
Well,
we do have backpack searches in subways and stuff, which is very close to this, but at least they're not in every corner with a handheld metal detector, the right to search you if you go beep. So, I mean, and running your information, random police stops. I mean, there are some cases where there are random stops where they ask for your papers. You know, we got to fight immigration, but at least it's not in this issue. It's not quite as bad here yet.
And usually it's an isolated incident when you see people being randomly searched on a broad basis in the United States, whereas in the United Kingdom, the reports we get about surveillance by the police and draconian measures like this, it seems to be a lot more broad, and it seems like they're pretty much expanding this to be a standard procedure. So, you know, without some kind of a document or contract to limit government, it will slip towards tyranny much more quickly. And that's what we're seeing in the United Kingdom, which culturally is a country a lot like the United States.
Yes.
But clearly, politically, they didn't have some of the safeguards we have. Not that our safeguards are any guarantee, and they seem to be failing.
It usually just pushes it off for about 10 years or so. Stuff that we would consider a complete no-no because it would violate the Fourth Amendment way too much for certain police tactics. We'd say, no way that could ever come to the United States, but 10 years later it seems to be the norm, such as cameras on the streets. UK picked that up first. They had the cameras everywhere before us, and we were over here saying, no way citizens would allow the government to just watch their every move and videotape their every move. But now it's normal in a big city. That's what you get. And just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, no one ever thought that it would come to that extent. So in 10 years, is this going to be the norm? I sure hope not. It's not a country I want to live in where the police can stop me, wand me, and search me if I go beep. Anyways, Nick, let's move on. We don't have too much time here. We've got to get on to the Downsizer Dispatch, find out what's going on in Washington and what the viewers can do about it.
Well, one way to protect yourself from draconian police measures is to not have to carry a national ID card, which is actually pretty common in Europe. And that's what the government's been trying to push down on the states and on the people with the Real ID program, which is basically a plan to standardize all the individual state driver's licenses, even though the states would still issue them. So it wouldn't be a true national ID card in that it would still say your state's name. So it would say New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont, whatever state you happen to live in. And it would be issued by your DMV, not by the Department of Homeland Security. But the information that they would have to collect would be standardized. Could include biometric data like fingerprints, iris scans, or anything else that the Director of Homeland Security wants to mandate. Congress doesn't really have to make the changes. The Department of Homeland Security can make those changes all on its own. So it is essentially a national ID card, and the database would be federal. So all the data would be in one place, namely Washington, essentially a national ID card. Thankfully, many states have been saying that they won't comply with this. New Hampshire and Montana were some of the first, and many states have followed suit, which is a good thing. And they've pushed back the deadline. Originally, the deadline for states to comply was going to be May 11th, and if they didn't comply, the idea was that residents of those states wouldn't be able to board an airplane or enter a federal building or really do anything that involves the federal government without either a passport or some other kind of federally approved ID. Your driver's licenses wouldn't count. So, but thankfully that's been pushed all the way back to 2017.
Whoa.
Full compliance is now not required until 2017. I think there's some interim steps they expect the states to take. But that's a long time to push it back. That's 9 years. It sounds like the federal government is very close to throwing in the towel, and that's a very good thing. Real ID is going to be expensive. It's going to cost about $9.9 billion. and the federal government is offering states $280 million in aid plus $80 million in grant money. That's about 4% of the total cost. The rest of that would have to be picked up by the states and by you, the viewer, being a taxpayer in those states.
Yeah, and let's not forget, federal dollars are still paid by you, the viewer, as far as that goes as well, because when we say it's federal dollars, who cares about federal dollars? Well, we all pay federal taxes as well. So taxes, no matter where they're coming from, are bad. Real ID, definitely bad. So let's squash this one. Let's push it off, all the way off the table, so there's not even a date on here. 2017, that's some good work, but let's take it all the way off. You guys can help downsizedc.org. Is there anything else quick they should know about?
No, that's about it. There's some other good reasons to oppose the National ID card and the Real ID program, and you can check that out at downsizedc.org. Learn more about it if you're not really sure where you stand on the issue yet. And they make a pretty convincing case that we don't need it, and it's just going to spend billions of dollars that don't need to be spent.
And turn us into the UK, which we had a revolution to get away from. All right, when we come back, we are going to be talking about some rallies, protests that are happening at the rallies for the Republicans, as well as a rally that's going on kind of the opposite of the Republicans. Ron Paul will be talking about it when we come back. Stay tuned. This is Free Minds TV.
Free Minds TV is brought to you in part by Life Productions for your basic and semi-pro video production needs. From full wedding and event coverage to DVD authoring and distributions, lifeproductions.com. That's lyfproductions.com.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV. As always, this is Toby.
And Nick.
I'd like to invite the viewers to log on to our website. freemindstv.com is the address. From there, we have all sorts of stuff. We have archives of the TV show, the radio side, all sorts of ways you can contact the show, help the show, all there. freemindstv.com. I'd like to remind the members that there's some exciting news on the members side. So if you're a member, you haven't checked it out yet, check out the members side for the exciting news that's happening with Free Minds Radio. If you're not a member yet, it's only $3 a month or $30 a year. It really helps out the show. Tons of bonus stuff available to you, new stuff, as well as all the archives of the old show. All right, Nick, let's get right into it. Let's talk about the Republican rally. Not really the rally so much that's going on at the Republican National Convention. What I'm more interested in is the protests and how the media is being treated, how the media is covering these protests, and what the police are acting like at these protests.
Well, for the viewers who are watching us on Public Access TV, you may already be aware of the television program Democracy Now! Since they're widely distributed on a number of public access stations around the country. We would disagree with them on a number of political issues, but we would tend to agree on police state abuses and things of that nature, freedom of the press. And they got a taste of repression firsthand when they were documenting protests outside the Republican National Convention. The host, Amy Goodman, was arrested after her two producers had been arrested by police. Basically what had happened was her producers were in a group of protesters documenting it. They are a news show, so they're there to document the protests. And they ended up getting boxed in by police. Police come in from different directions, surround this group. They were in the area, and they had their press credentials on them, both their Democracy Now! Press passes and RNC press passes, which you have to go through pretty extensive background checks to get a hold of. So they were clearly vetted as members of the press who were there to document what was going on. But the producers were snatched up, and they've been charged with felony riot.
Felony?
These are felony counts, simply because they were there. They were in the parking lot with the protesters who got arrested, so they're guilty, potentially guilty of a felony.
And this is everybody who was involved in this protest here? You're in a felony for this? This isn't just being arrested and having your rights trampled when you're trying to express your views. I think in the First Amendment it says that we have the right to peaceably assemble. Was this unpeaceable? Were the protesters violent and hurting people?
You can't see too much of the demonstration beforehand.
Was Democracy Now! They had their cameras rolling? Were they being violent and inciting a riot?
No, whether the protesters were violent or not, if there's a violent protest going on, you would expect the press to be documenting a riot.
Yeah.
That's what the media does. They cover, unusual events, and a riot would be one of those, and they weren't there throwing rocks and tear gas at the police. So she actually, Amy Goodman, the host of the show, was arrested because she had heard that her producers were being detained, went to ask why they were being detained and try to get them out of there, and the police pretty much immediately grab her, push her away.
Remember all those nice things I said about the United States last segment, about how the UK is using their powers and abusing them? I kind of want to take them all back now. I mean, felony riot charges for being a member of the press at a protest, a peaceable protest, which is guaranteed by the First Amendment of the United States. What's this thing for? This is very disappointing, Nick. I'm a little bit upset.
It is, and Amy Goodman was
upset.
charged with a misdemeanor count of obstructing a peace officer, so-called.
A peace officer now. They're not.
They're riot police. I mean, they're
stormtroopers.
They're skullcrackers. I mean, that's.
You see their batons. Those things aren't for helping people out. They're not for lifting old ladies off the street. They're for cracking heads.
Yeah, certainly, and these are members of the press. I mean, they can't make the argument that they needed to do this for security reasons, and that the press members were out of control, and they weren't the only. From the reports Democracy Now! Was giving, these weren't the only members of the press to get detained, and similar things happened in Denver at the Democratic National Convention. Unfortunately, apparently, this is what cities, police departments think is appropriate to do at political conventions in the United States now.
It is absolutely disgusting, but we got to move on from this because I can't be angry for too long. Let's move on to something that's a little bit better, something that'll make us a little bit more happy. What's going on with Ron Paul and his rally? At the same time this was going on, Ron Paul was rallying the troops around Liberty. What did he have to say? How'd it go? How'd the convention go in Minneapolis?
Pretty well. I watched quite a bit of the live webcasts that were coming out of Minneapolis, and the Ron Paul Rally for the Republic, what it was basically a culmination of Ron Paul's political campaign for president, which obviously has not ended with success, but also to launch a new effort called the Campaign for Liberty, which is really a nonpartisan movement to create a grassroots movement for smaller government, more personal liberty, constitutional government. Basically, the ideas that Ron Paul espoused in his political campaign, so to keep his activists active, to give them something to do to advance this movement for more liberty. They don't have to wait another 4 years for the next presidential election to come around. There's a lot more you can do to change the state of affairs in this country than try to get somebody elected president. President's only one office anyway, so even if you're only electing people, presidents actually aren't supposed to have all that much power compared to Congress. There were a number of interesting speakers. Jesse Ventura spoke, gave about a 20-minute speech, which was pretty interesting, former governor of Minnesota, and he hinted at a possible presidential run in 2012, saying that if he thought the groundwork was laid and that people were still interested in this, that if it would be worth it to run and he thought he stood a chance of winning, he would probably run as an independent or maybe with a third party. Wasn't too clear on the specifics of that. Other interesting speakers, Grover Norquist, tax reduction or anti-tax advocate. Also Lou Rockwell of LouRockwell.com and Mises.org. Lots of really impressive speakers. And it was, by essentially libertarian standards, it was a large convention. I mean, they had over 10,000 people there, somewhere between 10,000 and 18,000 people. Wasn't an exact figure on there. And of course, Ron Paul topped it off with a pretty impressive speech. So there are activists who were involved with the Ron Paul campaign, many of them staying active. There's no clear direction on who they might be supporting in November, because some of the speakers there were speaking favorably of Bob Barr, some were speaking favorably of Chuck Baldwin of the Constitution Party, and some didn't seem too interested in either, or in politics in general.
Ooh,
so
maybe they should think about the Free State Project or something like that, come to New Hampshire and make one place free instead of the whole country.
Well, actually, I believe there were members of the Free State Project at the Rally for the Republic trying to recruit people. Actually heard some of them call in co-hosting Free Talk Live, which is a radio program that both you and I co-host generally Tuesday nights, and got some calls from Free Staters who were in Minneapolis. So, all in all, people still care about reducing the size of government, getting back to a constitutional government, and just living basically in a free country where you don't have to worry about getting arrested for filming happenings when you're a member of the press. So a positive event coming out of Minneapolis. Unfortunately, there were also many people being arrested who probably shouldn't have been. So the police state and the nanny state in full force.
Unfortunately. So. But when we come back, we're going to see what you guys think about it. We haven't gotten to your feedback about the show, but it's about that time that we listen to you guys and hear some of your comments, your voicemails you've been leaving on the talkback line. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. This is Free Minds TV.
Free Minds TV is brought to you in part by freekeen.com, bringing liberty activists together with blogs, a forum, and more. All at freekeen.com. That's freekeen.com.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. With you, as always, is Toby.
And Nick.
So, we used to read a lot more viewer emails on the air. I don't know. We kind of just started stepping away from it a little bit, doing more of that kind of stuff on Free Minds Radio, the radio side of the show. But, we got a lot of feedback, a lot of comments on our show from last week where we were talking about privatizing certain government services or having a user fee for them, such as using the library. If people are using the library, should it be free or should they pay for a card? And people really feel heated about this subject. A lot of them kind of cracking down on us for being harsh and too mean, and saying that people, if they're going to be using government services, should have to be paying for them, or even how dare we think about privatizing some of these services and getting the government completely out of it altogether. Not the government paying private companies, but just simply people doing business between each other, government out. Well, we got a few messages on the talkback line, some of them a little bit too long to play, but some of them are interesting. Let's go ahead and play the first message.
Hey, guys, this is Ross from West Virginia. Enjoy the show frequently. I see a bit of anger in your voices sometimes. It's not, the message we're trying to carry, but frustration, I guess, is a better word. But libraries, I think, even if they're paid for by everyone, is a nice thing for all, whether you use them or not. Golf courses, tennis courts, some of these other things, I think are over the top. But I think libraries would be okay. So that's my take. Keep up the good work.
Love, not hate. So there's someone who says library is okay. We do. I guess I think that was me that got a little bit too angry, saying that people are taking money from me to pay for someone else who uses the library when I don't even use the library. So why should I have to pay for that? I might have gotten a little bit heated on that one. But he says the library is okay. Golf courses, tennis courses, some governments provide those. Going a step too far. So different people have different lines on where they say the government should draw, and where do you draw the line on how far the government should go, how much should they be providing and paying for. Some people say nothing at all, some people say everything, and some people are more in between the middle. And I did get a lot of emails from people who thought I was completely heartless, wanting to take books away from younger people, but some from the other side as well. This person says, Maskew says, good points. I would never pay a user fee to use a library that would report my readings and research habits to the feds, nor do I think my tax dollars should go towards their spy tactics. Perhaps you could cover this topic. If we have to adhere to the road with bicyclists, why don't we require people to register their bikes, thereby paying a tax to help pay for the roads? So kind of getting off onto another issue for another day. Personally, paying for road wear and tear. I don't think bicycles wear too much on the roads. They don't really wear them down the same way cars do. So I don't know, but point taken nevertheless.
Right, and we also did get some feedback from people who didn't agree with us at all for suggesting that we should reduce what the government takes on out of general taxes. Libertarians don't understand the concept of a social good. Their mentality is, why should I pay for something that might not directly benefit me? Well, let me stop right there. Libertarians have a mentality that they or anyone else should not be forced to pay for something that they don't want to pay for. libertarians aren't against charity. In fact, I think there have been studies done that show that people who are either fiscally conservative or describe themselves as libertarians tend to give more freely to private charities than people who self-describe as liberals.
That's because they don't think the government's going to be counting on it. I mean, someone who's of the liberal persuasion, and this isn't all liberals, don't think I'm throwing a blanket statement on all of you out there, but a lot of the time they're thinking, well, I'm paying for this social program with my vote. I'm simply voting the money out of your pocket so the poor will get fed. Well, conservatives or libertarians, or people of the nature that think government shouldn't be providing these services, think, well, the government's not going to provide them, so I better. So I think that's the point that's taken across, and it's a blanket statement. I'm not trying to throw that out to all of you, but for some parts it works out.
And personally, I'm just going to read the rest of the message here because it actually makes me feel good, and I'll explain why at the end. They call it liberty, anarchy, freedom, individualism, and volunteerism. Actually, voluntarism is usually the term used, which makes it sound somewhat noble. At the heart, it's all about me, me, me. However, it's a selfish ideology, which is why it has great appeal. Libertarianism is the core driving force behind American economic policies of the last 30 years. Well, no, it's not. the economic policies of the last 30 years.
What, do we live in a free market all of this stuff?
Right. I mean, the amount of government control in the marketplace has arguably increased.
I think definitely has increased.
Yes, the amount of areas that they have regulations and maybe certain corporate tax rates were lowered from say 25% to 20% or something like that. That's not libertarian economics. Free market economics and Reaganomics are two completely different things in their actual application. Right. So obviously that person didn't understand that point, but usually I'm guessing that they're somebody who would consider themselves on the left, or just call them a statist. They believe that the government needs to take care of things or they won't get done. Right. Well, they seem pretty threatened, and they seem to think libertarianism has great appeal, which is news to me because it's generally been ridiculed and called a fringe ideology by those same people for the last 30 years. The fact that now they seem to be getting defensive and trying to attack it, and actually thinking it's worth their time to attack it, seems to tell me that liberty, the cause of liberty and the ideas of liberty might be slowly gaining popularity and actually stand a chance of changing the country and the world that we live in.
That sounds good to me.
It sounds good to me too.
So we'd love to hear from you guys, what you guys think about it. We're out of time today, but if you'd like to leave us your feedback, possibly to be read on the show, leave us a number on our talkback line, 206-350-0123, 206-350-0123, or email us, fmtv@freemindstv.com is the email, fmtv@freemindstv.com. Love to hear what you think. Do you think I was a little too angry and harsh today? I might have been at times. I get a little bit heated about some of these subjects because, well, they actually really do affect all of us. Well, I'd like to thank the sponsors of tonight's show, anarchyinyourhead.com, as well as Life Productions, Life with an I, and freekeen.com, helping to keep us on the air, send our show out to lots of different cable stations, and even helping behind the scenes to make Free Minds TV possible. One more? Did you have one more thing to say?
It's Life with a Y. You said Life with an I.
Oh, Life with a Y.
If you type in Life with an I don't know what you'll get,
yeah,
so use the Y.
My bad. Sorry about that. I meant Life with a Y. Anyways, it has been Toby here with you.
And Nick.
Join us for an all-new Free Minds Radio this Sunday, 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard, and an all-new edition of Free Minds TV next week. Have a great night.